Coming up this week on Fire Your Financial Advisor, brought to you by Golden Reserve, estate planning attorney Tim Stallings joins us to talk about some inheritance issues. I found an interesting list from Kiplinger. It says these are the worst things to inherit. Timeshares is the number one thing on the list. Don't send that down to your kids. Have you had that experience?
Yeah, we've run into that. I mean, in my family, my parents decided every kid should have one timeshare. So since the 80s, we were picking up timeshares. My old man could wheel and deal with the best of them when it came to figuring out the points and the weeks and all that stuff. But I think what a lot of families are seeing now is if you're not using it, it can be kind of expensive. And trying to deal with that from the estate planning side is something that we frequently are tackling when it comes to things that are difficult to inherit.
So have you ever seen the Da Vinci Code? Yes. You know, like there was, I think, somewhere between 200 and 3,000 clues and steps. That's light work to get out of a timeshare. That is light work. Da Vinci Code's a piece of cake. Find the Holy Grail is a piece of cake versus getting out of a timeshare. You are stuck. And be careful. If you have to go get like a free flight and a free meal or a free weekend to go somewhere to sign up for something, you better read the small print. Yeah, because they're hard to hand off.
Those contracts tend to be, 99 years or something like that, and trying to get out of them is not easy. Along the same lines, the second one on the list is vacation properties. You got 3 kids in the family, mom and dad pass. 2 of them want to sell the place for the money, and the other one's sentimental and wants to keep it. And Tim, these are things that you dump on your family that can cause discord, and that's not what you want to do.
They'll all get along, right, Randy? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And whether it's the, lake house or sometimes we see some hunting property, whatever it is, if you have more than one child, you got to talk about that ahead of time, because once you pass away, it's not just your kid, but their spouse has to also agree to whatever you're doing. So from an estate planning standpoint, it's something we get ahead of, because if we want to keep it in the family, there's ways to do it. We can set up an LLC, for instance, to have ownership rules in place. So if somebody wants out, that's fine, but we have a mechanism to do it. And if you just have a will, or if you don't do anything, the likelihood of that staying in the family for the next generation is really low.
I think one of the things is what mom and dad like isn't always what the kids like. So I think in mom and dad's mind, they're like, this will be great. We'll hand this off. And it's like, I don't golf and I don't want to be in Orlando. So what am I going to do with this thing? Right. That's one of the things is talk to your kids to see if they want it like that. I think sometimes you go through all this work and they're like, we won't use it. Or we don't want it. And the second of which, if you do put it together, like a perfect example, my mom's one of 9 kids, and they all had a lake house cabin, and grandpa and grandma wanted to keep it in the family. The 9 siblings, it's hard to get them to agree on everything. So what they did is they set a chunk of money aside to pay for the taxes and utilities and the upkeep to go in perpetuity for the next 20 years. And that was part of this structure that ensured that the cabin could stay open. Now, if everyone didn't want to use it, it's fine. But now it's not going to cost people money to have it, unlike a timeshare or possibly an HOA fee at some of these places where all of a sudden you're like, I don't use this thing. It's actually, this inheritance is costing me money, which is kind of the opposite of the idea of an inheritance.
When a celebrity dies, I can tell you what, we learn about estate planning issues. And there have been so many of them. I mean, people who die without a will, Prince, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, and it takes years to unravel all of this. Michael Jackson, he established a living trust, but he didn't put anything in it. It was useless. Marlon Brando said to a lot of people, I'm going to give this to you when I die, and then never put it down on paper. And Florence Joyner, they all thought she had a will, and when she died, nobody could find it. So, Tim, these are things that we want to say, don't let this happen to you. We should learn from this, but a lot of times people just don't, do they?
No, they don't, Randy. And unfortunately, some of those people weren't young in the tooth, right? Like some of them died young, but some of them were in their 70s and 80s and still didn't have a plan. So, we want to avoid that. We could obviously tell stories all day of people that didn't plan and all the hardships they caused their family. But, at Golden Reserve, we just think of it as, why wouldn't you do it, right? So when I've talked to people and they haven't done estate planning, there's some common reasons why they say, I haven't done it yet, right? It's too expensive. I don't know where to start. I'll do it someday. and maybe they haven't had like that catalyst life event that said, hey, I have to do this. If I worked with Michael Jackson or if I worked with Aretha Franklin, we wouldn't have had these issues, Randy.
Well, Greg, when I think about this, I mean, when they say they don't have a will, that's one thing. When they say they do have a will and nobody can find it, or that nobody can make heads or tails of it, that kind of means to me that they try to do that themselves with LegalZoom, or they just wrote it down on a piece of paper. Because as an estate planning attorney, once you create a will, don't you retain a copy of that where somebody says, hey, they died, we've got a copy of the will?
Yeah, I think most times there's not a missing will. I think because when you put together a will, your attorney has a copy, right? Like the person that provides the will, they get a signed copy for the records for this very reason. Hey, we lost the original, so at least they have that evidence that it's been signed. Wills are tricky too. Like when you do it yourself, people don't realize they have to be state to state. There's different execution requirements. Some require 2 witnesses. Those witnesses can't be beneficiaries. It's just got a lot of moving parts. So when I think through this, a lot of harping is on a will. And at the end of the day, wills don't do a lot. I'll be honest with you. Wills basically, by default, you're probably going to say everything to my family per stirpes is like the most common. I want to say, maybe Tim can chime in, but maybe 95% of wills are just like, hey, to my kids equally. Well, guess what? The state does that already. In both scenarios, you'll have to go through the court process. Wills go through court. They go through the probate court. And people think, oh, I have a will, I can avoid that. No, it's the opposite. If you have a will, it's a one-way ticket to probate. The only way a will is administered is by a judge. And people are like, oh, shoot, well, how do you avoid that? Well, there's a lot of ways that we talk about probate avoidance, because probate costs money, right? There's court fees, there's attorney fees, there's costs, all that stuff adds up. So, and there's the public versus private. Maybe you don't want all your stuff being, disclosed to the county probate court where now everyone knows everything you had. And if those things are sensitive, then you need to explore other options, things like beneficiary designations, transfer on death documents, payable on death documents, trusts. All of these things are done outside of the court process and don't require the time and cost, because if you go to probate, there's a good chance it's going to be a minimum, not a good chance, it is a minimum of 6 months and could be most likely a year or 2. And that isn't like fighting or problems or issues. That's just the process, because you have to have it open for so long so creditors can make claims, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a bunch of laws that relate around this. And if you want to clean this up, you have to just have a plan and the right people involved to get the trust. Like, when Tim said it, we either update your existing legal documents or we create new ones. And a lot of times this is an important part of the process that gets missed because people put it off, or like a lot of them have a will, right? I have a will, because when people have a kid, they basically do a will that says, here's who's going to take care of my kid if I die. That's like the epitome of when most people get something in place and then they get to retirement, and that's 20 years old. And now it's like, well, shoot, maybe I want my kids to be my executors now. I want them to be the power of attorneys, the healthcare power of attorneys. There's all these, agency documents that you need. Healthcare, who's going to make your healthcare decisions? Who's going to make your finance decisions? People think because you're married, your spouse has access. They don't. They don't have access if you become incapacitated. You have to have documentation allowing them access. And these are the things that commonly get missed, are easy to fix, and why they have to be part of every retirement plan, Brady. I mean, that is the non-negotiable of retirement planning. And again, is why we include it as part of our flat fee, using our attorneys, the reimbursement that we use to apply to law firms so that all of this stuff gets done, is because it's that important. And frankly, we're a little biased because we used to be Tim is, and I used to be a estate planning attorney. I guess I still am a estate planning attorney, but I don't practice anymore.
Well, Tim, I mean, there's just some boxes to check off, and we think we're going to walk through the door and it's going to be investments, protection, Social Security, healthcare, taxes, but you've got a whole bunch of boxes to check off as well. And I bet some of them are kind of surprising to people, but in order to make sure that there's not family problems, Tim or Greg always says that, when tax difficulties come up, you don't care, because you're dead. and you don't want to take that attitude with your family when it comes to estate planning issues.
Yeah, and I think, look, frankly, the folks that come and sit down with us, like, we're blessed. We get to work with some of the most rock solid folks who worked hard and saved their money, and they don't want to leave a mess. They might say, I don't care. They care. That's why they're there. And our goal is just to walk them through those scenarios in layman's terms, so they understand, like, if you got sick, who gets to talk to the doctors on your behalf? Who gets to make the medical decisions? What if people don't agree, right? Who's the quarterback? Who's the primary person, right? And it's generally their spouse first if they're married, of course, but then we got kids all over the country. That's why, people aren't leaving those, houses that we talked about earlier, vacation homes to their kids. So we have to work through that issue for healthcare. Same thing on the money side. Not all kids inherit money in the way mom and dad would like them to. So what can we do to make sure that when they do receive the money, that it's put to best use? It doesn't cause problems, right? We don't want to exacerbate a child that has, issues, whatever that is. And for me, I think of playing defense as much as I think of playing offense, especially when it comes to your legal planning. Because my old man was a pipe fitter. He worked really hard. He saved his money. I thought all the rich people invented Facebook. That's how they made their money. And what I realized in estate planning for 20 years is that quite often they inherited some and then they didn't lose it to divorce or financial issues, getting sued. And part of what we talk about is how can we keep that wealth in the family, right? We talk about the nursing home and having a plan, to make sure your spouse is okay, but also to leave that farm or whatever's important, to that next generation. So, those are things that frankly, the do-it-yourself plans, they just don't address.
This is one of those moments where I can show you very, very vividly how Golden Reserve is different. And as you walk through the door and we talk about building a roadmap for retirement, this is going to be one of the issues that we're going to go through. And it's really an entire retirement plan, from where you're traveling like crazy at the beginning to when your health has some problems to what happens at the end when you leave this world. We've got to have all the paperwork and all of that nailed down. Give us a call and let's start on that process today. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website. And when we talk about retirement planning, we're not just talking about investments. We're not just talking about taxes. We're not just talking about Social Security. We're talking about a lot of other issues as well. And that's where I believe Golden Reserve really does shine. The people at Yahoo Finance have a retirement podcast, and they recently discussed some of the mistakes to avoid. And one of them was focusing too much on markets, focusing too much on Wall Street, and ignoring the other risks. They bring up these four: inflation, interest rate risk, tax risk, and longevity risk. And Greg, as you've gone through, you wear T-shirts that say, the price of milk isn't going to ruin your retirement. So as far as inflation goes, yeah, we're going to build something in, but it's not going to wreck your retirement. Talk to me about these four things that they talked about here.
Do I have to, Randy?
Yes,
I have
you
to?
have to. You just have
I have to. Okay. So inflation, we talk about the show every week. A lot of it's hoopla. I don't think it really affects directly retirees as much as it's advertised, and we talk about that at length. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Interest rate risk. You probably don't have a mortgage anymore. If you do, it's fixed. So again, other than it affecting the stock market's value when interest rates go up, it could hurt the stock market, things like that. Most people aren't laddering bonds. So, kind of a yawn. We talk about tax, and we'll talk more in a later show. So, we got Tim here. I want to focus on the longevity risk, particularly long-term care. Okay. In the 1980s, the cost of a nursing home was $10,000 a year. $10,000 a year. Now it's $10,000 a month. No one wants to pay for long-term care insurance. It's expensive. You don't qualify. So this leads a huge gap. People stay in 3 years, 4 years. We're talking about what could be $400,000 or $500,000 per person of risk sitting on their balance sheet, and it's almost universally ignored by the financial industry. Almost universally ignored because no one wants to have the hard conversation of, there's a statistical probability one of you are going to go in a nursing home, and we need to talk about it now because it's really, really expensive, and it could impoverish the surviving spouse, or you could lose all your assets. How do you want to handle this? And this is where Tim and I really focused building Ayler Stallings, the law firm, at the beginning, because we realized this risk is something that a lot of people just don't want to dig into.
Yeah, Greg said it. The statistics are not really in our favor. The good news is we're living twice as long as we did 100 years ago. The bad news is there's a good chance you're going to need help. And when it comes to longevity, if you don't have a plan and those care needs come about and the costs are rising, you're in a bad position, right? Because most people don't have long-term care insurance, so they're either paying out of pocket or they have to navigate through, the government benefits that are available. And unfortunately, what we see is the people in the middle, kind of your middle, upper middle class folks, they get the squeeze, because if you don't save your money, they pay for you. And if you have tens of millions, you're not really worried about it, right? But the folks that have $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, they're not writing checks every month for $10,000 without noticing. And that's why long-term care is something that we focus on. And we'll challenge people. Hey, if you had a problem, how would you address it? Not, oh, I'm going to spend my own money down that I worked hard to save for, because that can end poorly. And if you have a spouse, oftentimes people say, I'm really worried about my spouse's diagnosis. I get that call once a week. With Parkinson's and dementia and those things on the rise, you can be in a facility for a decade, and that can completely wipe out everything and really impoverish the spouse. So I don't want to be Mr. Downer here, but it's something that you really have to have a plan for.
So what are the answers here as you sit and do the planning here at Golden Reserve? What's the answer to all this?
Well, one of the tools that we often explore with folks, Randy, we call it our asset protection trust. And essentially what we're doing is we're looking at the assets, we're looking at the things that aren't really driving retirement, oftentimes things like that house or money that you're not spending, and we can be proactive. There's a 5-year look back, so you have to do it ahead of time. But we'll look at taking some of those assets, protecting them in a trust, and then if someone does need care 5 years or more down the line, those assets are protected. And for a lot of families, that's the best thing that they get from that legal planning, is knowing that if we have care needs, we're not going to have the issues that we would have had.
And no long-term care insurance premiums, Randy. No premiums
that go up every single year. Yeah,
No doubt.
are some of those issues. And when we do our roadmap for retirement, it's going to handle markets, it's going to have taxes, fees, long-term care, and income. Let's get it all done for you under the umbrella of the roadmap. Give us a call. Give us a look on our website, getyourroadmap.com. As we talk through some of the issues of retirement, we can't help but talk about that stock market. And a lot of you are probably focused a little bit too much on that stock market, according to the people, amazingly enough, at Goldman Sachs. They say our appetite for the stock market is going up. Over the last 10 years, the allocation for equities, the stock market, in your 401k has gone up, even among people in their 60s. People seem to be returning to TINA, which is there is no alternative to growing your money. So, Greg, do you see this happening right now, that people still want to be pushing into that stock market? Is the greed factor still there, or are people backing off on it when they come to see you?
After 600% growth and no one losing any money in 10 years, people want more of that, Randy? Weird.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're running a narrative that hasn't had the cliff to fall off, right? Like, so the industry's like, buy more cake while you can, stack it up. And as we've always mentioned, from like 2011 or 12, the stock markets went up like 600%, right? Like it's offensive. Even this year, after a big kind of scary dip after the tariff stuff, we're still up 2% for the year. And 2%ish for the year, and 2022 bounced back too. So we haven't had that real good spanking. The goods. You remember when as a kid when you got that good spanking, you're like, wow, my dad got his money's worth. Like, we all remember when we did something we shouldn't have done and we got the spanking. The retirees need that spanking because I think it will save their retirement. Right at the end of the day, you don't want to have your life savings at the tail end of a good run. You want to be at the beginning of the run. And all of them were on at the beginning of the run, and now they want to be at the end of the run too. This feels a little greedy to me. I get it. It's hard to be off the train. Now, I think it's getting easier. The train's slowing down, right? When you had 10% returns last year, it was hard. Or, or every year for the last, 7 or 8 years, and people are talking about big returns. I mean, it might be hard. And then now this year, maybe we have a flat year. I don't know. Who knows what the next 6 months will happen? Now, what I will tell people is hard to explain unless you're like living it, but should you really be indexing off the stock market? And what I mean by that is when you try to benchmark against something that has no correlation to your life, it's a dangerous place to be. Why don't you actually benchmark based on what you need in retirement? And your ride will be a lot smoother, easier, and probably very little risk. So if you need $20,000 or $50,000 of, earnings to break even every year, why don't you do something that you can do with 100% certainty that you won't go backwards? Like, I can't understand this. I got to beat the S&P, or I need 10% returns because I need to beat inflation. And I'm like, really? Show me what's gone up 10% in your retired life every year outside of pizza. right? And how much pizza are you eating, bro? Like, I get it. Pizza's twice as much. In the last 5 years, pizza's doubled. You got me. You caught me. But other than pizza, unless you're and at that point, so if pizza's $25, it's not $15 or $10 anymore. Okay. But is that going to upset your $1 million retirement when you're eating pizza every 10 days? No, it's not. So why are we putting all of our life savings at risk because you want extra pepperoni? I don't think that makes a ton of sense. I think that's why we run our market risk report, because we show, listen, you have this percentage of assets in the stock market, which can go backwards. And what that means in English is, here's what your holdings did in 2000, 2009, and 8, 9, 2022. This is how much you would lose in dollars. If we say, hey, you got $1 million, you would have lost $417,000. They'll be like, what? Yeah, that's actually what happened with your holdings during this time period. We've just been on a really good run. Are you still comfortable with that amount of risk? And then you have to ask yourself, does getting 10% more a year change my life? How about losing 10%? How about losing 20%? Does getting 20% change your life at all? And the answer is almost undeniably always no. Making an extra 10% doesn't change how I live my retirement, but losing 10 or 20% really would. So then why are we still doing it? The market risk report is the alarm clock that hopefully gets people to realize you have to take risk for some reward. And if there is no reward, you shouldn't take the risk.
Tim, are you watching? I'm going to go out in left field here for just a second, since we're both golfers. Have you seen the new thing on Netflix with Owen Wilson called Stick? Have you seen that?
I have.
So in that, he, in order to manage her son, who's this prodigy golfer, he gives her $100,000. And what do you see? She takes that $100,000 to the bank, to a guy behind a desk at a bank who's supposed to be a quote unquote financial advisor, and she wants to roll that 100,000 into $1 million. You can just see what she wants to do, and he is just so uncomfortable. He's like, "Ma'am, I don't think I should. We can't do that for you." And she gets up and she walks away. But that's what she wanted. She wanted to roll that into a fortune. And sometimes, when people get toward retirement and they see they're a little bit behind, they want to take on extra risk in order to roll it up right before they retire. Have you seen it? And what's the conversation look like?
Well, I've seen it. And I think Greg said it earlier, and he couldn't be more right. The reality is that, I know, raise your hand, Greg. You did it. But I agree, right? So I see this, I'm the attorney, but I see what happens over long periods of time. And what I see is, if you get single digit returns for decades, you'll win. And it's really that simple. Everyone's chasing these 10%, 20% returns because we have this recency bias. But the reality is, listen to Warren Buffett, right? What did he say? Never lose money. That was his number one wealth building principle, right? So, and he had money in the market, but he was smart about it, right? He didn't have it all in one position. And that's what we do, right? The first thing is, you got to know how much risk you're taking. And once you get that market risk report, now we're off to the races. We can make sure that it's much more in line with where you are in retirement. So,
how much do you really need to be successful in retirement? You might be surprised. You don't have to beat the market. You don't have to, get 10% every year. You might be really surprised. That's what comes out of our roadmap for retirement when we talk about our market risk report, along with all the other things that you get as well, including the IRA tax plan, the fee analysis, the long-term care plan, the income forecast. It's all a part of our roadmap for retirement. We'll put one together for you at no charge. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website. You can start right there. Coming up on the second half of Fire Your Financial Advisor, how could you lose half of your retirement money and has nothing to do with the stock market? Look at what it costs to live today. What do you think that number is going to be in 20 years? And should you pull money from your IRA to let your Social Security grow? All those coming up on the second half of Fire Your Financial Advisor. Okay. The Department of Labor says that a 1% fee in advisor fees or financial fees, or however you want to say it, can lower your retirement by 28% over 35 years. So think of it this way. You have $1 million in your 401k. You lose 25% of it to taxes. You lose another 25% of it to fees. You only have 50% of your retirement money to enjoy. That doesn't seem right. But, Greg, it actually is a reality, isn't it?
That's the numbers, Randy. That is the numbers. And numbers are feeling hurters. I feel like when we wrote Fire Your Financial Advisor and rolled it out, most people said it read like fiction. right? Like, like, I can't believe this is real. I can't believe this is actually what happens. And it's almost like a story that was circumstantial. And it starts with all of this is built around a system. And, why do we have a show called Fire Your Financial Advisor? Well, we have a book called Fire Your Financial Advisor. And the idea isn't that your financial advisor or, guy or gal is a bad person. It's that the industry is built on quicksand, right? It wasn't built on a strong foundation that actually related to the needs of retirees. And this was because of the way in which it was built. Because back in 1978, when the Internal Revenue Act came out and all of a sudden they invented the 401k, the 401k then replaced pensions. And now you had a bunch of $50,000 to $100,000 accounts that said, hey, help me. And Wall Street's like, we're not taking those on. That's not enough money. Well, then all these retail financial advisors started like paratroopers jumping out of the airplanes. Here they come. They're bombing in. The Edward Jones, Raymond James, Ameriprise are diving and opening offices in every small town in America. The idea was simple. We don't know what we're doing because most of them were like selling garage doors or something before, this. And you don't have to have a college degree to be a financial advisor. So they were jumping in. They didn't know what they were doing. So they started selling mutual funds. And that's really how the industry took off. And the irony of it is, do you really think someone that has $1 million needs someone managing their portfolio? Like literally actively managing a portfolio of $1 million. Do you think there's any cost-effective way to do that? And the answer is, of course not. We're not launching rockets. They want to go to dinner on Thursdays to the Mexican restaurant. They want to go to Florida for a month a year. They want to golf once a while, and they want to. They have a Social Security. They're not spending extravagantly. We don't have cash flow management issues. This is an all-American family that that saved and did all the things right. And now they have this industry saying, well, you need all this stuff. You need a diversified portfolio. Do you? Do I need a diversified portfolio? If I know I can get 5 to 7% year in, year out, and I got $1 million, I got $50,000 of Social Security coming in. We know statistically it comes up every year. The average $1 million investable client in retirement spends roughly $70,000 a year. I know people are going to say, I spend $100,000. You're probably early in retirement. It will go down. And over the course of retirement, it averages out to $70,000. So that's a $20,000 delta. We talk about this in almost every show. If you got $1 million, that means you need 2% a year. Now, am I saying you should only get 2% a year? No, I'm saying you should take this as far as risk will allow it. And if you can get risk-free returns in the 5s, 6s, and 7s, do it. And then keep the rest of the money and spend. Go on an extra trip. I don't care if you don't want to spend any of your principal. And gosh darn it, Randy, what if you actually want to spend on your principal? What a crime. You actually want to spend some of the money you spent a lifetime building. I mean, Tim knows this story. It's hilarious. People are like, I can't spend any of my principal. It's like, who brainwashed these people into not spending their money? The idea isn't to end life with a statement of some return or some dollar amount. It's about memories and doing things with your kids and your grandkids and your spouse and your friends and going out and living all there is to live out there. And this whole situation is built on them. The entire financial industry isn't built about retirees' needs. It's about finding ways to charge you. If you don't believe me, think about it. You have a percentage fee that comes out based not on what they're doing, but based on the zeros in your bank account. Then you have another percentage fee based on the investments they sold you. And all of this is getting netted off returns or added to losses. So you never see it. The whole game is built to beat you. And that's why we have a fee analysis, Randy, that we do for every client that shows you exactly in dollars what you're paying each year to your advisor and what you're paying in investment costs. So then you can say, man, I got $1 million, but $25,000 a year sounds like a lot. Because it is. It is a lot of money. It is a lot of money to pay Eddie to do what? Text you on your birthday? Have a lame Christmas party that is buffet style? Like, come on, 25 grand. When's the last time you spent 25 grand on anything? And those are the type of fees we see every day coming out behind the curtain, being netted off gains that no one can see or feel. Cutting a check for $25,000 would change this industry if you had to do it every year to your advisor. But they know that, and that is why it's set up this way and why we have to have special software to show you your investment fees, Randy.
Give us a call. Give us a look on our website, which is getyourroadmap.com. Getyourroadmap.com. There's a place for you to put some information in there. You may not have any idea what you're paying in fees. You just say, I have a 401k. What could I be paying? Well, guess what? Those nice people at Fidelity and Vanguard and, John Hancock, they don't work for free. There is money coming out of your account. You might be surprised at what that is today, and certainly over a 20, 25, 30-year retirement as well. Now, if you've been with us for a couple of minutes, you have already heard about Greg when we talked about inflation a little bit. He's not a big proponent of inflation is going to wreck your retirement. But I found an article in Yahoo Finance that asked ChatGPT a question. I thought this was interesting. If you make $60,000 a year today, how much will you need in 20 years? And their answer, ChatGPT's answer, was $108,000. With that math, in 20 years, does everything go up 80%? So I looked at the cost of butter, the cost of eggs, and the cost of an F-150. Why not? In 2005. And that 80% actually does track. So, Tim, let's start there. Building a retirement plan, building in those raises into a retirement plan, it is an important thing to do, but will inflation wreck your retirement plan? I guess that's what we have to ask here.
No, of course it won't wreck your retirement plan, but it is a variable that we want to be cognizant of, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk about it because people bring it up. As part of our income forecast, we're looking at where folks are right now and where they're going to be 25 years down the road in retirement. And then we're figuring out, based on their spending and their income and what they've accumulated, if it grows 5%, where are they going to be down the line, right? And for most folks, that gives them that confidence for retirement. Now, do they ask about inflation? Sure. Do we build those factors into our analysis? Of course. But at the end of the day, they want to know, this is binary, Randy. Am I running out of money or am I not running out of money? And it's not just about, I got to save my principal and I'm going to get 4%. I heard Greg say that earlier. It's like, who brainwashed these people is right. I want to give them permission to enjoy their retirement. I had the good fortune of taking an awesome vacation last month, and we had a guy drive us around in a Jeep. And on the side of his Jeep, it said, the goal is to die with memories, not dreams. And I felt like it was something I needed to see, because when it comes to things like inflation, it's scaring people into not doing anything. So, I may be taking this a little different direction than your question. But for the folks that we work with, they just want to know each year, am I going to be okay? Can I take that vacation? Can I have fun? And yes, inflation, is it something we should consider? Of course. But if we do that income forecast for them, not just at the beginning, but updating that each year to show them you're still going to be okay, we get a lot of smiling faces. When I sit down with folks, they get to tell me about all the fun stuff they're doing. And that's really what I see is one of the benefits of getting to work with people and letting them see how they get to spend their money.
Greg, I saw a quote the other day, and it said, if your plan ends with you dying with $1 million, your plan failed. Now, I know you boys are both estate planning attorneys. You might not see it that way, but you see where he's going. If you die with a whole bunch of money, you should have spent that money. You should have enjoyed that money. You should have made memories with that money, and that's exactly what you talk about all the time.
Yeah, I know it's hard. Like, I'm not going to get my mom and dad to go out and spend all their money, right? That's a fool's errand. But I can get them to spend a little more. Mm-hmm. And that was the idea of building the income forecast, was pushing out last year's spending. So the way the income forecast works, and if you get a roadmap, we do the first one, obviously complimentary as part of our process to show you what it looks like. And it basically pushes everything that you spent last year 25 years ahead. And it only uses a 5% return. It does have some inflation. It has some healthcare. It has the travel, you tell us. We put all those things and we push it out. And we show you how much money's left in 25 years. And that number is usually bigger than where it started. And that's the sad part about how most people view their retirement is they're scared. So I think I just want to take one quick minute here to say, why are they scared? And why do people keep, talking about inflation? If you're saying it doesn't really matter, and I'm saying it doesn't really matter, I really am saying that. I mean it. And I think anyone that isn't is being disingenuous. It is a talking point by the financial industry. It's why we have this show called Fire Your Financial Advisor. It's a talking point to do two things. One, it's to get you to not spend your money. Ask why they wouldn't want you to spend your money. Here's a hint. They take a percentage of your money as their fee. If you can't think that that doesn't influence their advice and the scare tactics they use, then you're probably lying to yourself. Now, maybe it's subconscious. Maybe they're a good person. Maybe, I don't know. But that is undeniably a driver for you not to spend your money, means that they will make more money. The second is that they want you to take more risk with your money because that's what they're selling. They sell market participation. So they're going to scare you saying you need to make more money. You got to use my advice. You need me more. Because even though money can go up and down, they know when money goes down, you're not going to leave. You're going to sit there and wait and try to figure it out. Those type of things make you stickier as a client. If you're in something boring and predictable, then they have less hooks in you. Those are the cynical reasons on why they continue to talk about inflation at length. And the opposite reason is why we built the income tent, to say, listen, we charge a flat fee. We don't care what you spend. Now, we care. We don't want you to run out of money, but we want to show you that we're aligned with you on the same side of the table when it comes to our advisory fees, because we think that's the right thing to do, to show people, look, we want you to live your best retirement with memories, not necessarily dividends, or in Tim's case, dreams.
We would love to have the opportunity to talk through this with you. If you don't have anybody helping you right now plan your retirement, why don't you give us a call? There is no charge to sit down and start that roadmap process and build that roadmap for retirement. Use our website, which is getyourroadmap.com. All right, somebody wrote into the MoneyWise advice column and says, I am opting to draw down my 401k first so that I can boost my Social Security checks. Is this a shrewd move or a boneheaded choice? Okay. Tim, how would you answer that question? What are the ups and downs of all of this?
Well, I love the question, because what it does is it shows that the person asking it is thinking ahead in terms of getting taxes paid on those retirement accounts. And I can tell you, if you don't have a plan for taxes, Uncle Sam isn't looking out for you. We see two big issues come about when people don't plan on how to pay taxes on those IRAs. One, we call it the widow's penalty. And unfortunately, we see situations where mom and dad are taking money out of their 401k that's now an IRA, and one of them passes away, and all of a sudden we still have the same lump sum untaxed, but now we're paying as a single person. And what that really does, Randy, is it can mean you're paying twice as much in tax to get dollars out of that IRA. And if that's not bad enough, under our current law, we also have the kiddos penalty. You guys might remember kids used to be able to stretch those IRAs, but unfortunately they have 10 years to get all the taxes paid. The average person inherits at about 58 years old, which is often their highest earning years. And what we see is those kids are already in high tax brackets. Now they're inheriting money from mom and dad that's untaxed, and it's getting taxed way up in those 24, 32% tax brackets. We don't want that to happen. So I would love if a prospective client asked us that question, because we could definitely show them how we can save them money. You know, when we put together a tax plan, that's one of the tools that we use, and it shows them what happens if you don't plan. We call it, again, the widow's penalty and the kiddos penalty, and we can show them that once they've reached retirement, it's time to start talking taxes. We don't have to wait till they're 73. If they're 62 and they're retired, we're having that conversation, because every year we wait means Uncle Sam is going to get more.
Yeah, this is a huge miss by the financial industry. Huge miss. Huge. This is one of those things where people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to wait till 73. Why would I pay taxes if I didn't have to? That's kind of the mentality, right? I don't have to take an RMD, so I'm going to wait. Unfortunately, Tim just talked about the two penalties that you run into, but to make the math, make sense, when people delay their Social Security, it grows, right? You can end up, growing at 8% a year. You can max it out. So you can make up the difference faster. That's what this person's getting at. If I put off Social Security and my Social Security is going to grow, should I use my IRA money? I know that sounds and feels scary. It's not lost on us. That feels scary, that you're spending your savings and not using the money that's supposed to be going to you. I'm not saying you have to do that. If you are so scared that you're going to run out of money, then of course we'll try to talk you out of it, because you won't. But you can turn on Social Security and still do the tax planning. But if you wait and not turn on your Social Security, you're going to have less income, because Social Security, some of it's taxable, which means you can get your money out of your IRA at a lesser tax rate. And a lot of times this means you can get it out at 10 or 15% versus what Tim mentioned, 30, 35%. So if you have $1 million IRA, imagine paying $100,000 or $150,000 on that over the course of the IRA. Usually takes 7 to 10 years to get it all out, or $350,000. Randy, what would you do with an extra $200,000? That's the power of tax planning that the industry continues to miss, and no one knows about it. People are like, why don't they talk about it? Because you're dead. That's why. You're dead. Mom and dad are dead when this whole tax windfall goes to Uncle Sam, because the kids pay it at their rates and they're not as concerned because it's an inheritance.
Let's sit down and talk about your retirement. I mean, you've been putting this off for an awfully long time, and you see your friends retire and they seem to be doing okay, and you're wondering how it's all going to work out for you. Let's actually get something down on paper. When you sign up to do a roadmap for retirement, that is no charge to you. We're going to talk about markets and IRAs, 401ks, fees, long-term care, income, all of the things that you're going to encounter in your retirement years. That's how we've built our roadmap for retirement. Give us a look on our website, getyourroadmap.com. That's getyourroadmap.com. All right, let's keep the conversation going about your 401k, because that's where most of us have saved money for our retirement years. Morningstar took a look at people who are investing in their 401k and where they are investing in their 401k, and they found last year $4 trillion with a T, $4 trillion is in target date funds. And we've talked about these before. The idea is you pick a fund with the year in it that you're going to retire, and then your risk goes down as you get closer to your retirement date. The question is, does that work? This is Carrie Hannon, and she is at Morningstar, and she kind of believes in these things.
But what I love about these and why they're so great for many investors is, like, when the markets go jangly, we don't sit there and worry, because these are kind of balancing, diversifying your investments in a way that so you don't have to be panicking, and you know that they're going to rebalance in order to keep you focused on what the goal is.
To that, I would say, well, really?
Where's the hey, Randy, hold on, slow the show down. Do you have where's the moron button? Do we have the moron button? Are we allowed to call people morons still? That's not a thing?
We don't have that yet, but we can build a moron button if you'd like.
Oh, Carrie. Like, let's just take a step back. Blood pressure at 201, by the way, Randy.
Okay,
my blood pressure at like, to say that someone has a fund that figured out how to time the market perfectly is laughable. So the way a target date fund typically works is it puts a bunch of equities in there, and as you get closer to the end of retirement, it replaces some of your holdings with bonds. The end. Wow. I wonder if that always works. What if you take a huge crash and all of a sudden it starts adjusting the fund before you bounce back? You know, these things have never really performed well. This is shocking that people are still putting their money in these things. It's basically all marketing, because isn't it nice to be like, hey, I don't want to think anymore. I just want to put the retire in 2030. That sounds easy and fun to me. Is that how life works? Is that how investment works? No, they haven't cracked the code. This is the new toaster oven. If I got to hear one more person talk about a toaster oven, all right, if you have a toaster oven, I'm about just cover your ears. Like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Turn the station. They are the biggest ripoff of all time. The toaster oven is the dumbest thing on the planet. It's special. But stop it. Stop it. You know what a toaster oven is? It is a heavy, huge 2-foot by 2-foot thing that you got to pick up and put on your counter and take it on. It overheats, and it's so small that you can only get one order of chicken nuggets in it. If you got 3 kids, there's no way it fits. And oh, by the way, your oven has a convection oven setting, which is exactly the same thing. It's an oven with a fan. It's just great marketing. That's all a toaster oven is great marketing, and that's all this is. But it has more fees. It is so expensive because someone has to manage this. So they're netting their fees off. Look at your expense ratios on target date funds. They are usually high. And if they're usually high, that means it comes off your returns or is added to your losses, which makes your ultimate return less. Be careful if something seems too easy. There are no shortcuts in retirement. You have to do the work, pick the investments, and stay away from the toaster ovens, Randy.
Tim, I mean, you guys have been best friends for a long time. When the little vein in the middle of his forehead starts throbbing, do you get the nitro out and give it over to him, or what are we looking at here with him?
I mean, stay away. It's like when the Hulk shirt comes flying off, right? Goodness gracious. I mean, you said it earlier, moron button. This to me is the easy button, right? Like my wife came home. She said, which one of these things should I pick? And it's a 2030 fund, a 2040 fund, a 2050 fund, right? She wants to press the easy button. And the reality is we want to think through this. This is our retirement. Like it shouldn't be a 10-second decision that made someone else's life easier, right? The advisor for the 401k plan, but it might not be right for you. So that's why you got to talk to us.
And so we talk about having Uncle Sam's plan for taxes. Would you rather have his plan or your plan? Would you rather have your plan for your 401k or the one that the financial system has put you in the easy button, as the guys say? Not necessarily where you want to be. Let's get some advice. If it's just something as simple as where your 401k money should be, let's have a conversation about it. Give us a call. Give us a look at our website, getyourroadmap.com. Make that call today. We thank you so much for listening today. We'll see you next week.